Now let's talk about focus. Obviously a very, very important part of photography. We've all had great photographs ruined because the soft focus just takes away all interest. Now, when you're focusing on your subjects, most of us are going to rely on autofocus on the camera, and generally that's going to come out great. There's going to be times, though, when you really want to make sure your focus is perfect, and here's a few rules of thumb to help you achieve that. First of all, when you're taking a photograph of a human, the most important thing to focus on are the eyes. And that may mean that you zoom in, do a manual focus on their eyes, and then zoom back out and recompose the photograph. And again, you would have shut off autofocus, go to manual, zoom in really tight so that you can really see the detail and get those eyes crisp. That's very, very important when you're taking human photographs. Now, another tricky focusing situation is when the subject of your photograph is not centered. He's off-centered one way or another. And this is really going to happen when you use the rule of thirds to offset your subject to add more interest to the composition. Keep in mind that your camera is going to want to focus with whatever it sees right in the center of its field of view. So there are a couple of ways to work around this. The simplest way might be to simply move to manual focus, zoom in on your subject, focus, then zoom back out and recompose. Your focus will stay the same when you zoom in and out. Another way is using what's called the exposure lock. And generally that's a button somewhere near the controls of the camera where your thumb can get to it. And it allows you to zoom in on your subject, push the button which holds the focus and the exposure. Holding down on the button, you zoom back out and take the picture after you've recomposed, and it will maintain whatever focus that you had when you started pushing that button. Another way to control focus when you're composing your photograph is using the focus controls that you see through the viewfinder. Now, in most cameras, there's a toggle or a dial on the back side, something accessible with your thumb, that you can move the point of focus and metering around on your photograph. Now, this is important because as you compose the photograph, you can, for instance, move the squares up onto someone's face or move it to the subject on the left to keep the background blurry. It's a way of making sure that you can choose the item in your photograph that is sharp as you compose the photograph. Do it all at once. And that way you can keep the foreground sharp and the background blurry, or move it around and focus just on the background and keep the things in the foreground blurry. So when you're composing to the rule of thirds, for the gazebo, for instance, which was shifted over to the right, I use my thumb to toggle the focus point over to the right, and then I was sure that the gazebo was going to be a nice tight focus.